Her scent changed the moment she realized what he was. Not fear, something darker, more primal. Because deep down, Liana had always known the truth. Being unwanted by the beta was never her tragedy. It was being wanted by the alpha that would consume her whole. The redstone territory stretched before Liana like a prison disguised as home. 17 years she'd lived here, invisible among the pack that had taken her in, not out of love, but duty. An orphaned Omega with no bloodline worth mentioning, useful for her healing hands and nothing more. As the moon cast silver light through the healer's lodge windows, Liana methodically arranged dried wolfsbane and juniper, her fingers working with practiced precision. The scent of herbs masked her anxiety, but nothing could hide the erratic beat of her heart. Tonight, she would tell him. After months of feeling the bond pulse between them, that inexplicable connection the moon goddess bestowed upon the worthy, she would finally speak the truth to Beta Jace Holt. Perhaps then the ache would stop. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, agitated and hopeful. Careful, it seemed to warn. He might not feel what we feel. He does, Liana whispered to the empty room. I've seen how he watches when he thinks I'm not looking. The truth was, Liana had spent her life watching others without being seen herself. That's how she'd first noticed Jace's gaze following her between pack gatherings, his nostrils flaring subtly when she passed, his body angling toward hers in a room full of more important wolves. The bond had begun as a whisper 3 moons ago, a gentle tug that grew more insistent each day. Her hands trembled now as she tied the final bundle of herbs, hanging it from the rafters alongside dozens of others. Beneath the herbal perfume, her own scent had started to change, becoming sweeter, more potent. A mating scent. It would only grow stronger until it overwhelmed her ability to mask it. Which meant tonight was her last chance before everyone knew. Without warning, the lodge door swung open, sending a rush of night air through the room. The bundles of herbs swayed gently, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Working late again? Jace's voice fell over her like warm honey, deep and familiar. Her wolf pressed eagerly against her skin, urging her to turn. As if pulled by a string, she faced him. Tall and broad-shouldered, the beta embodied everything the pack valued: strength without brutality, power without cruelty. His dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that made him seem younger than his 30 years, though the responsibility of being second in command had carved lines around his eyes that weren't there when they were children. The moonflower only blooms at night, she answered, gesturing to the delicate white blossoms soaking in a crystal bowl. Their healing properties are strongest if harvested under moonlight. The space between them buzzed with unspoken tension. Her wolf whined, desperate to close the distance. Jace moved further into the room, his eyes never leaving hers. I didn't come for healing. Her breath caught. Then why did you come? The moment stretched between them, fragile as spider silk. His eyes darkened as he inhaled deeply, and she knew he could smell it now, the change in her scent that called to him specifically. You know why, he said quietly. The bond pulsed, strong enough that Liana had to grip the wooden table for support. Her skin felt too tight, her wolf too close to the surface. I do. Jace moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I've been fighting it. An invisible fist squeezed her heart. Why would you fight something the goddess herself has blessed? Because it complicates everything. His voice held a tension she'd never heard before. A beta has responsibilities. Expectations. Understanding dawned slowly, painfully. And an Omega healer doesn't fit those expectations. In that moment, her heart knew what his next words would be before they left his lips. The air thinned around her as her world began to tilt. You deserve someone gentle, Jace said, his voice carefully controlled. Someone who can give you a quiet life. Her wolf howled in anguish, but outwardly, Liana remained still. That's not for you to decide. The bond. The bond is real, he interrupted, and for a moment hope flared bright and hot. But then he continued, I feel it. But I can't honor it, Liana. The silence that followed was absolute. No wind rustled the herbs. No night creatures called from beyond the windows. Even her heart seemed to pause between beats. You're rejecting me. The words fell like stones between them. I'm setting you free. The cruelty of his kindness cut deeper than rage ever could. Because rejection without anger left no room for her own fury, only hollow acceptance. As though fate demanded it, the lights in the room dimmed suddenly, wolves conserved resources, and the electric generator often shut down at night to save fuel. In the abrupt darkness, only the moonlight illuminated them, casting Jace's face in silver and shadow. Free, she repeated, the word tasting like ash. Is that what you call this? Something shifted in his expression then, regret, perhaps. Or relief. I can't be what you need. Her voice trembled. You didn't even try. Jace's hand moved as if to reach for her, then dropped back to his side. The pack needs me to be strong. Unmoved by personal attachments. So I'm a weakness? The hurt crystallized into something harder, sharper. You're a complication I can't afford, he said, so gently it was almost worse than if he'd been cruel. Between one breath and the next, something inside her shattered. Not her heart, something deeper. The fragile belief that fate had finally seen her worth. Her wolf surged, clawing to be released, to run until the pain couldn't follow. But Liana held firm. She would not break before him. Not now. Not ever. Then I'll remove the complication. Her voice emerged stronger than she felt. Consider yourself unburdened, Beta Holt. The title fell between them like a wall. Formal. Distant. Final. Liana. No. She raised a hand, stopping him. You've said enough. The bond will fade with distance. I'll request assignment to the border station at first light. Shock flashed across his features. The border station? It's isolated. Dangerous. You can't. I can and I will. Her decision crystallized with each word. Unless you intend to order me to stay? To witness your mating to someone more suitable? The truth hung exposed between them. He would choose a mate. Someone stronger. Someone the pack would respect as his equal. And she would be forced to watch, the rejected bond a constant, aching reminder. Jace's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. She turned away, busying her trembling hands with the herbs. Good night, Beta Holt. She didn't look back as his footsteps retreated, didn't allow herself to crumble until the door closed firmly behind him. Only then did she sink to the floor, arms wrapped around herself as if to hold the broken pieces together. Her wolf howled, the sound echoing only in her mind. The pain of rejection burned through her veins like poison. Tears never came. Perhaps she already spent them all during the years of invisibility, of quiet longing. Instead, a cold clarity washed over her as moonlight pulled around her huddled form. With every heartbeat, that clarity hardened into resolve. By dawn, she had packed her meager belongings, herbs, books, the handmade knife her adoptive healer mother had gifted her. Nothing that couldn't fit in a single bag. No one tried to stop her when she filed the transfer request. No one questioned why the quiet healer would choose isolation at the pack's borders. No one except Elder Maya, who had raised her after her parents' death. The border station hasn't been properly manned in years, Maya said, watching as Liana gathered the last of her supplies. The elder's gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, but her eyes held the warmth they always had for her adopted daughter. "It's no place for a lone wolf. It's the perfect place for me," Liana replied, refusing to meet the knowing gaze. "I work better alone." This has nothing to do with Beta Holt's sudden interest in Karina Morgan's daughter, does it? The mention of Jace's new attention target, a strong female from a neighboring pack with impeccable bloodlines, sent a fresh wave of pain through Liana. Her wolf bristled. "My transfer has nothing to do with anyone but myself," she lied smoothly. Years of hiding her feelings had made her adept at it. Maya stepped closer, her scent wrapping around Liana like a familiar blanket. "Child, running from pain only ensures it follows you." Liana finally looked up, allowing a glimpse of her agony to show. "And staying guarantees it never leaves." Understanding passed between them. Maya nodded once, reaching out to tuck a strand of Liana's chestnut hair behind her ear. "Then take this." She pressed a small vial of amber liquid into Liana's palm. "Cedar oil. For protection." The gesture nearly broke her composure. Cedar oil was rare, precious. A talisman against dark magic and wild creatures that prowl beyond pack borders. "Thank you." Liana slipped it into her pocket, then shouldered her bag. "I'll send word when I've settled." "See that you do." Maya hesitated, then added, "The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, child. Remember that." As Liana stepped out into the morning sunlight, those words followed her. No mistakes. Only lessons too painful to comprehend. No one else appeared to bid her farewell as she crossed the pack grounds toward the forest path. Redstone Pack's territory stretched for miles, bordered on one side by mountains and on the other by the Silver River, which separated them from Midnight Crest Pack's land. The border station sat at the river's edge, a small cabin built generations ago when tensions between packs ran higher. Now it served mostly as an outpost for hunters and a waypoint for official messengers. It would be her sanctuary. Her exile. As the main pack house faded behind her, Liana felt someone watching. She turned to find Jace standing on the training field, his attention fixed on her departing figure. Even from this distance, the bond pulled and twisted between them, refusing to acknowledge his rejection. For one breathless moment, she thought he might come after her. Call her back. Admit his mistake. Instead, he simply raised a hand, acknowledgement, farewell, apology, before turning away to where a stunning blonde waited, her perfect features arranged in a possessive smile. Karina Morgan. His suitable choice. Liana's wolf growled, the sound vibrating in her chest. Without another glance backward, she plunged into the forest, letting the shadows swallow her whole. As the woods thickened around her, Liana felt something shift in the air. The sensation of being watched didn't fade as the pack grounds disappeared behind her. Instead, it intensified. Her steps faltered as she scanned the trees, nostrils flaring. A new scent tickled her senses, unfamiliar, powerful, distinctly male. Unfamiliar meant dangerous. No redstone wolf would hide their presence from her. Her hand moved to the knife at her belt. Show yourself, she called, voice steadier than her racing heart. The forest held its breath. Sunlight dappled through leaves, creating shifting patterns that played tricks on her eyes. Was that movement by the ancient oak? A shadow near the fallen log? I mean no harm to any who respect redstone borders, she continued, slowly turning in a circle. Nothing. Yet the feeling persisted. As her wolf stirred restlessly, Liana forced herself to continue walking. The border station was still 2 hours away, and daylight wouldn't last forever. With each step deeper into the territory, the sense of being followed grew. Occasionally, she caught glimpses of something moving parallel to her path, too large for a fox, too silent for a deer. By the time the river's rush became audible, her nerves were stretched taut. The border station appeared ahead, a small wooden structure nestled against tall pines on the riverbank. Its windows were dark, its door secured with a heavy padlock. Relief flooded through her as she fumbled with the key Maya had given her. Home. Or the closest thing she'd have to one now. As the lock clicked open, the hairs on the back of her neck rose. Slowly, deliberately, she turned toward the forest's edge. There, half hidden in shadow, stood a wolf unlike any she'd ever seen. Massive, with fur as black as midnight save for a single slash of silver across its chest. But it was the eyes that froze the breath in her lungs. Alpha eyes. Glacial blue and burning with an intensity that pinned her in place. Her wolf recognized the threat instantly. Alpha. Not her alpha. Not from her pack. The massive wolf took a single step forward, emerging fully from the treeline. Its gaze never wavered from hers, holding her captive without a single touch. "You're trespassing," she managed, voice barely above a whisper. The wolf's head tilted slightly, almost human in its assessment. And then, between one heartbeat and the next, the air around it shimmered and distorted. The shift happened so quickly she barely registered the transformation before a man stood where the wolf had been, tall, powerfully built, with the same midnight hair and piercing blue eyes. A jagged scar traced the line of his jaw, disappearing beneath the collar of the black shirt that had materialized with him. Despite her fear, Liana couldn't help but notice he was beautiful in a dangerous, untamed way that made her wolf stir with interest rather than retreat in fear. "Am I?" His voice was deep, rough-edged, as if human speech were an uncomfortable fit. "I believe I'm still on Midnight Crestland." Understanding dawned. The river. The border. She was so focused on her escape that she hadn't realized how close she'd come to the territorial line. "Then I apologize," she said carefully. "I'm new to the border station." His gaze traveled deliberately from her face to the cabin behind her, then back again. "So I see." He took another step closer, and Liana fought the urge to retreat. "I'm Rowan Stone. Alpha of Midnight Crest. An alpha. Here, alone, at their border." The implications were staggering. Alphas rarely traveled without guards, especially to territorial boundaries. Liana. Healer of Redstone Pack. She offered no title because she had none to give. "Healer," he repeated, something unidentifiable flickering across his features. He inhaled deeply, his eyes never leaving hers. "You've been crying." The observation, so unexpected and intimate, startled her. "I haven't," she lied, though her eyes still burned from unshed tears. "Your scent carries it." Another step closer. Now only the invisible line of their territories separated them. Grief. Pain. His nostrils flared again. And something else. Her hand tightened around the knife still clutched at her side. "My emotional state is none of your concern, Alpha Stone. Instead of taking offense, his lips curved into something too predatory to be called a smile. Perhaps not. Yet. The way he said it, with absolute certainty, sent a shiver down her spine that wasn't entirely from fear. "What do you want?" she asked directly, abandoning protocol. An alpha from another pack should be addressing Beta Holt or Alpha Morgan, not an Omega healer. Rowan's gaze intensified, seeming to look through her rather than at her. Interesting question. He tilted his head again, that wolf-like gesture that reminded her he was more predator than man. "I came for the Moonstone Harvest negotiations. I stayed because I caught a scent that..." He paused, searching for words. "Demanded investigation." Her scent. He'd followed her scent. But that could only mean... no. Impossible. Yet as she stared into those glacial eyes, the broken bond inside her gave a peculiar lurch. Not pain this time, but something more troubling. Recognition. Her wolf, so recently wounded by rejection, suddenly pressed forward with unexpected eagerness. As if sensing the internal conflict, Rowan's expression softened fractionally. "You feel it too." It wasn't a question. Before she could deny it, a howl pierced the air from the direction of the pack grounds. A summons. For her? For him? Rowan's attention never wavered from her face. "They're calling me to the negotiations," he explained. "But this conversation isn't finished, little healer." The way he said it sounded like both promise and threat. Without waiting for her response, he shifted again, that fluid, impossible transition from man to beast, and the midnight wolf regarded her one last time before disappearing into the trees, leaving only his words echoing in the sudden emptiness. "This conversation isn't finished." As Liana stood frozen at the threshold of her new home, she realized with absolute clarity that her escape had led her straight into something far more dangerous than a rejected bond. Because while Beta Jace hadn't wanted her enough to fight for her, Alpha Rowan's eyes had promised something altogether different. They had promised he would never let her go. The Alpha's scent lingered like a brand long after he'd vanished, and that night, for the first time in her life, Liana dreamed of a wolf that wasn't hers, midnight black with eyes that could freeze blood and thaw desire in the same merciless glance. 3 days passed in tense solitude at the border station. Liana threw herself into cleaning the abandoned cabin, scrubbing away years of dust and neglect while trying to ignore the constant sensation of being watched. The small structure consisted of just 3 rooms, a main living area with a worn sofa and fireplace, a cramped bedroom with a narrow cot, and a clinical space that would serve as her healing room. Simple. Functional. Lonely. On the 4th morning, she woke to find paw prints in the soft earth outside her door, massive imprints that could only belong to one wolf. They circled the entire cabin before disappearing into the trees toward Midnight Crest territory. Her wolf stirred anxiously beneath her skin. "He's marking our territory." "It's not our territory," Liana muttered to herself, kneeling to examine the prints. "And he's not our alpha." Yet something primordial within her responded to the claiming gesture. The broken bond with Jace had left a raw, aching void that her wolf desperately wanted filled. That emptiness made her vulnerable to the powerful pull of an alpha's attention, especially one whose glacial eyes seemed to see straight through to her soul. As the wind shifted, bringing the forest scents more sharply to her senses, Liana froze. Beneath the pine and river mist was another fragrance, wolfsbane and juniper. Pack scents. Redstone wolves, approaching rapidly. Without conscious thought, her hand moved to smooth her hair, adjusting her simple tunic. "Stop it," she chided herself. "You're not trying to impress anyone." But her wolf knew the truth. Part of her, the wounded, rejected part, wanted Jace to see her thriving in exile, wanted him to regret his choice with every breath he took. 3 figures emerged from the forest path. Beta Jace led the small delegation, his powerful frame moving with the easy confidence that had first drawn her years ago. Behind him walked 2 pack guards, their expressions neutral but alert. No Karina. Small mercies. Liana straightened her spine and lifted her chin, determined to show nothing of the emotional turmoil his presence stirred. Beta Holt, she greeted formally, ignoring the painful lurch of the damaged bond. This is unexpected. Jace's eyes swept over her, then darted to the paw prints surrounding the cabin. His nostrils flared, muscles tensing visibly. You've had visitors. Not a question. An accusation. The border touches Midnight Crest territory, she replied evenly. Occasionally their patrols pass nearby. That's not a patrol's print. Jace moved closer, his familiar scent wrapping around her like a memory. That's an alpha's mark. The guards exchanged glances, hands moving subtly closer to their weapons. Border disputes between packs could turn deadly without warning. Alpha Stone introduced himself when I arrived, Liana said, choosing her words carefully. He was courteous. Jace's jaw tightened. Midnight Crest Alphas aren't known for courtesy. They're known for taking what they want. Unlike Redstone Betas, who reject what's freely given. The words escaped before she could stop them, sharp with lingering hurt. The guards stiffened, clearly uncomfortable witnessing such a personal exchange. Jace signaled them with a quick gesture. Secure the perimeter. Once they moved out of earshot, his mask of formality dropped. Liana. Why are you here? She interrupted, unwilling to hear whatever justification he'd prepared. His expression softened with what looked distressingly like pity. The Moonstone Harvest negotiations have begun. Alpha Stone requested you specifically as Redstone's representative healer. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Me? Why would he? He claimed he wanted to discuss medicinal applications of Moonstone with a qualified healer. Jace stepped closer, close enough that she could see the troubled shadows in his eyes. But that's not why he asked for you. Understanding dawned. You think he's using me to provoke Redstone? I know he is. Jace ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture of frustration she'd once found endearing. Alpha Stone doesn't make requests. He makes threats disguised as diplomacy. Her wolf bristled at the criticism, surprising her with its defensive reaction. Perhaps you've misunderstood his intentions. Jace's expression darkened. His intentions are written in every print around your cabin, Liana. He's marking you as a target. Or something else entirely, her wolf whispered. The memory of Rowan's intensity sent an involuntary shiver down her spine, not fear, but something far more dangerous. Anticipation. What did Alpha Morgan say about the request? She asked, redirecting the conversation. He agreed. Jace's displeasure was evident. The Moonstone deposits are too valuable to risk offense. Our pack needs this treaty. Of course. Politics and power always trumped individual concerns. Then I'll attend. She turned away, moving toward the cabin door. When is the meeting? Tonight. Jace followed, stopping at the threshold as if uncertain whether he was welcome inside. Full moon. Significant timing. The full moon heightened wolf instincts, made control more difficult. Made sense more potent. Made bonds, even broken ones, ache with renewed intensity. Without thinking, she pressed a hand to her chest, where the phantom pain of their severed connection still pulsed. Jace noticed. His expression wavered between regret and resolution. "I'll escort you to the central lodge at sunset." "That won't be necessary." The thought of hours in his company, pretending his rejection hadn't shattered her, was unbearable. "I remember the way. It's not safe for you to." "I'm no longer your concern, Beta Holt." She met his gaze steadily, though it cost her. "You made that perfectly clear." Something flashed in his eyes, frustration, longing, she couldn't tell. "Liana, despite what you think, I never wanted to hurt you. Yet you chose to anyway." The silence between them grew heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Jace nodded, accepting her rejection as she'd been forced to accept his. "Sunset, then. I'll inform Alpha Morgan to expect you." Without waiting for her reply, he turned and strode toward the guards, his shoulders rigid with tension. She watched until they disappeared into the forest, then closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply to steady herself. Only then did she notice her hands were trembling. Tonight, she would face both alphas, the one whose pack had never truly accepted her and the one whose interest threatened everything she thought she knew about herself. As if summoned by her thoughts, a howl rose from across the river, deep, commanding, unmistakably alpha. The sound vibrated through her body, calling to something primal within her. Without conscious decision, she moved to the small back window that faced the river. There, on the opposite bank, stood the midnight wolf, its blue eyes luminous even at this distance. Watching. Waiting. Claiming. Her wolf surged forward with such force that Liana gasped, bracing herself against the windowsill as her canines lengthened involuntarily. The partial shift response was shocking. She'd always maintained perfect control, even during full moons. The black wolf across the river tilted its head, as if sensing her reaction. Then it turned and melted into the trees, leaving only the echo of its howl hanging in the air. Tonight, that howl seemed to promise. Tonight everything changes. Liana spent the hours until sunset in meticulous preparation. She bathed in the river, using sprigs of wild lavender and mint to mask her natural scent, a futile effort against werewolf senses, but the ritual calmed her. She dressed with care in the one formal outfit she'd brought, a long dress of deep green that complemented her amber eyes and chestnut hair. Around her neck, she fastened a small vial of cedar oil, Elder Maya's protection gift. As the sun began its descent, Liana stood at the edge of her territory, staring down the forest path that would lead her back to the pack that had never truly been home. Behind her lay the river border where a midnight wolf had awakened something forbidden within her. Ahead lay duty, politics, and the man who had deemed her unworthy of the goddess's blessing. Her choice seemed simple: walk the path back to familiar pain or remain in this limbo of isolation. But as the full moon began to rise, casting silver light through the trees, Liana realized there was a third option, one that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She could step into the unknown. Follow the inexplicable pull toward glacial blue eyes and midnight fur. With heart hammering against her ribs, Liana turned away from the redstone path. Instead, she walked to the river's edge, where the boundary between territories existed as nothing more than flowing water and tradition. Across that divide, shadows moved between trees. Waiting. "I know you're there," she called, voice steadier than her pulse. "I know you can hear me." The forest fell silent, even the evening birds hushing their songs. Then the underbrush parted and he emerged, not as wolf but as man. Rowan stood on his side of the river, moonlight carving his powerful form in silver and shadow. Little healer, he greeted, his deep voice carrying easily across the water. I was beginning to think you'd choose the safer path. Her breath caught. How did you know I had a choice to make? His smile was slow, predatory, knowing. Because I've been exactly where you are, caught between what's expected and what's inevitable. The word inevitable sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the evening chill. They want me at the negotiations, she said, though he clearly already knew. You requested me specifically. Rowan took a step into the river, the water swirling around his boots. I did. Why? Another step deeper. You already know why. She did. The knowledge pulsed between them with every heartbeat, impossible yet undeniable. It's not possible, she whispered, even as her wolf howled its disagreement. The goddess doesn't grant second chances at mating bonds. The goddess, Rowan replied, now standing in the deepest part of the river, doesn't make mistakes. Perhaps your first bond wasn't meant to be claimed. The echo of Elder Maya's parting words struck Liana like physical blow. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, child. This is madness, she said, though she made no move to retreat as Rowan took another step closer, the water now receding as he moved toward her bank, toward Redstone territory. You're an alpha. I'm an omega without pack status or bloodline. Do you think I care about bloodlines? Water streamed from his clothing as he emerged onto her side of the river, covering the final distance between them with predatory grace. Do you think the wolf inside you cares about pack politics? He stopped mere inches away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the intoxicating blend of pine, river, and pure alpha power that emanated from his skin. What I care about, he continued, voice dropping to a register that vibrated through her bones, is that from the moment I caught your scent on the wind, my wolf hasn't known peace. What I care about is the way your eyes follow me when you think I don't notice. What I care about is this. With deliberate slowness, he raised his hand, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she remained frozen in place, he pressed his palm gently against her chest, directly over her heart. This pulse that quickens for me. This bond that's already forming, whether you acknowledge it or not. The contact sent a shock of awareness through Liana's entire body. Where Jace's rejection had left a cold void, Rowan's touch ignited something molten and unstoppable. The broken bond inside her gave a painful lurch, then began to warm, reaching toward something new, something stronger. Her wolf surged forward with a vengeance, eyes shifting from amber to gold as the partial shift overtook her. Why me? She managed, her voice husky with the effort of maintaining control. Rowan's own eyes blazed alpha blue in response, his canines lengthening as he smiled. That, he said, is what I intend to help you discover, little healer. Starting tonight. Without another word, he held out his hand, an invitation, not a command. In that suspended moment, with the full moon rising higher and the river rushing beside them, Liana stood on the precipice of a choice that would change everything. Behind her lay the path to Redstone, to the pack that had never truly seen her worth, to the man who had rejected the goddess's blessing. Before her stood an alpha who had crossed territories and defied conventions to follow the pull of something ancient and undeniable. As the night deepened around them, Liana made her choice. She placed her hand in his. The moment their palms touched, Liana's world fractured and realigned. Not the gentle whisper of her failed bond with Jace, but a deafening roar that threatened to devour her completely. This, she realized with terrifying clarity, was why Omegas rarely survived an Alpha's claim, not because of cruelty, but because the sheer intensity could break a lesser wolf's mind. Breathe, Rowan commanded, his voice penetrating the chaos in her head. Liana hadn't realized she'd stopped breathing until her lungs burned for air. She gasped, clutching his hand like an anchor in a storm. The forest around them pulsed with surreal clarity, every scent magnified, every sound crystalline, every shadow and moonbeam alive with meaning. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, watching in fascination as silver light seemed to dance beneath her skin where their hands joined. Rowan's eyes blazed with that impossible blue as he studied her reaction. "The moonstones," he said simply, as if that explained everything. Before she could question him further, a howl pierced the night, a summons from Redstone territory. Not just any summons. Jace's distinctive call, tinged with unmistakable urgency. Liana's head snapped toward the sound, old instincts responding even as her wolf resisted. "The negotiations," she murmured. "They're waiting. Let them wait." Rowan's grip tightened fractionally. "What's happening between us is more important than pack politics." The sheer audacity of his statement, an alpha dismissing formal negotiations between packs, shocked her back to reality. "You can't simply ignore." "I'm not ignoring anything," Rowan interrupted, his expression shifting to something more calculated. "I'm prioritizing. The moonstone harvest can't proceed without understanding what's already begun." Another howl rose, this one deeper, more commanding. Alpha Morgan, no doubt growing impatient with her absence. Without warning, Rowan released her hand and stepped back, leaving her swaying with the sudden absence of contact. The silver light beneath her skin faded, though the heightened awareness lingered. "They won't wait forever," he said, his voice returning to that formal alpha cadence that reminded her of his position. "And this conversation requires more privacy than a riverbank can provide." "What conversation?" Liana fought to regain her equilibrium, her mind still reeling from whatever had passed between them. "What did you mean about the moonstones?" Instead of answering, Rowan glanced toward the Redstone territory, his expression hardening. "We have company." The words had barely registered when Liana caught the sense, Jace and two others, moving rapidly through the forest toward the border station. "Toward them." "Go," Rowan said suddenly, stepping back toward the river. "Meet them on the path. Attend the negotiations as requested." Confusion and something like betrayal flashed through her. "You're sending me away? After whatever just happened?" His eyes softened momentarily. "I'm ensuring you have a choice, little healer. Tonight, you'll learn something that will change everything you thought you knew about yourself. About both our packs." He backed further into the water. "After that, the choice will truly be yours." Before she could respond, he shifted, that fluid, impossible transition from man to midnight wolf. With one last penetrating glance from those glacial eyes, he turned and swam powerfully across the river, disappearing into the darkness of Midnight Crest territory. The howls grew closer, leaving Liana no time to process what had transpired. Gathering her composure, she hurried down the path toward the approaching wolves, forcing her breathing to steady and her eyes to return to their natural amber hue. She rounded a bend in the trail just as Jace emerged from the trees, already shifted back to human form and hastily dressed. His expression darkened when he saw her. "Where were you?" He closed the distance between them, nostrils flaring as he caught the lingering scent. "You've been with him." The accusation hung in the air, heavy with implications. Behind Jace, two senior pack members exchanged alarmed glances. "Alpha Stone crossed into our territory," Liana replied truthfully, lifting her chin. "As Redstone's border healer, I addressed the incursion." "Addressed it?" Jace's voice dropped dangerously low. "By taking his hand? By allowing an alpha from a rival pack to touch you?" Heat flushed her cheeks, not from shame but indignation. I wasn't aware my personal interactions required beta approval. Especially since you relinquished any claim to that authority. The words struck like physical blows. Jace flinched, then masked it with anger. This isn't about us. It's about pack security. Alpha Stone is using you. For what purpose? She challenged. What could an Alpha possibly want with an Omega healer you deemed unworthy of bonding? The two witnesses shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing to be anywhere but caught in this confrontation. We don't have time for this, Jace finally said, his jaw tight with barely contained emotion. Alpha Morgan is waiting, and we're already late. Without another word, he turned and strode back toward the main pack grounds, clearly expecting her to follow. The two senior wolves flanked her as she walked, their presence more guard than escort. The journey passed in tense silence, giving Liana time to absorb what had transpired at the river. The silver light beneath her skin. Rowan's cryptic words about moonstones. The bond that had flared between them with an intensity that defied everything she'd been taught about mating connections. By the time they reached the central lodge, the full moon hung high in the night sky, bathing the pack grounds in ethereal light. Torches blazed around the ceremonial circle where important pack gatherings were held. Wolves from both packs stood in formal arrangements, Redstone to the east, Midnight Crest to the west. At the center waited the two alphas. Alpha Morgan of Redstone, gray-streaked and battle-scarred, his power a steady, unwavering presence. And opposite him, radiating controlled power like a banked inferno, stood Rowan Stone. Somehow, he'd beaten them here, showing no sign of his river crossing. His midnight hair was immaculate, his formal attire, black on black, emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his body. When his glacial eyes found hers across the gathering, something primitive and possessive flashed in their depths. Alpha Morgan noticed her arrival first, his displeasure evident in the tight line of his mouth. How good of you to finally join us, Healer Liana. The formal reprimand sparked murmurs among the gathered wolves. An Omega keeping Alphas waiting was unprecedented. The fault is mine, Rowan's voice cut through the whispers, commanding immediate silence. I requested a private consultation regarding the medicinal properties of Moonstone before our formal negotiations. The smooth lie surprised Liana, though she kept her expression neutral. Alpha Morgan's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but pack protocol prevented him from directly questioning another Alpha statement. Then let us proceed, Morgan said stiffly, gesturing Liana forward. She moved to the center of the circle, acutely aware of every gaze following her progress. Jace took his position at Alpha Morgan's right hand, his expression carefully blank despite the tension vibrating through his frame. At the heart of the ceremonial space sat a rough wooden table bearing a single object, a chunk of raw, unpolished moonstone the size of a fist. Even from several paces away, Liana felt its pull, an answering resonance within her blood that made her steps falter momentarily. Alpha Morgan began the formal invocation, his deep voice carrying across the silent gathering. We gather under the full moon to honor the ancient treaty between Redstone and Midnight Crest. For 3 centuries, our packs have shared the sacred harvest of the moonstone deposits that lie beneath our territories. As the ritual words continued, Liana found her attention drawn inexorably to the stone itself. In the moonlight, it seemed almost alive, pulsing with an inner radiance that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. The stones are divided equally, Morgan continued, half to each pack, to be used for healing, protection, and the strengthening of our bloodlines. Rowan stepped forward, his movement drawing all eyes. For 3 centuries, he echoed, we have followed these traditions without question. Tonight, I propose we examine the truth behind our shared history. A ripple of unease passed through both packs. Deviation from ritual was rare and often viewed with suspicion. Alpha Morgan's expression hardened. The negotiations are not a forum for historical debate, Alpha Stone. They are when history affects the present. Rowan's gaze swept the gathering before settling on Liana with unsettling intensity. Tell me, healer, what happens when you touch raw moonstone? The direct address caught her off guard. All eyes turned to her, waiting. In truth, she'd never handled unprocessed moonstone, few healers did. The raw stone was always refined before medicinal application. I don't know, she admitted. I've only worked with processed moonstone powder. Interesting. Rowan's predatory smile returned. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. Before anyone could object, he picked up the moonstone from the table and crossed to where Liana stood. The gathered wolves tensed collectively, but no one interfered as he held out the stone, offering it to her palm up. Touch it, he urged quietly. Show them who you really are. A hush fell over the circle. Liana hesitated, something like premonition crawling up her spine. Rowan's earlier words echoed in her mind, tonight, you'll learn something that will change everything. With a steadying breath, she reached out and placed her fingertips against the cool surface of the stone. The reaction was immediate and extraordinary. Silver light burst from beneath her skin, running like quicksilver through her veins and illuminating her from within. The stone itself began to glow, resonating with her touch, bathing the entire gathering in pulsating radiance. Gasps and murmurs erupted around her. Through the dazzling light, she saw Jace's expression transform from suspicion to shock. Alpha Morgan had gone deathly pale, his composure cracking for the first time in her memory. What's happening? She managed, her voice barely audible over the humming energy that surrounded her. The truth, Rowan answered simply, his eyes reflecting the silver glow that emanated from her skin. You're not just an Omega healer, Liana. You're a moonstone blood. The revelation rippled through the crowd. Elder wolves crossed protective symbols over their chests. Younger ones stared in undisguised fascination. Impossible, Alpha Morgan snapped, finding his voice at last. The moonstone bloodline died out generations ago. Clearly not, Rowan countered, his satisfaction evident. She stands before you, proof that the legends are true. The question is, his gaze locked with Liana's, did you know what she was when you took her in as an orphaned cub? Or have you truly been blind to the treasure within your own pack? The accusation hung in the air, heavy with implication. Liana's mind raced, trying to process what was happening. Moonstone blood. She'd heard the term in old pack legends, wolves whose very essence resonated with the sacred stones, who could unlock powers forgotten by modern packs. Wolves who were hunted nearly to extinction for abilities that threatened pack hierarchies. As realization dawned, Liana pulled her hand away from the stone. The silver light receded but didn't disappear completely, still tracing luminous patterns beneath her skin. Is this true? She addressed Alpha Morgan directly, protocol forgotten in the shock of discovery. Did you know what I was? The Redstone Alpha's silence was damning. He knew, Rowan spoke into the tense quiet. Just as my father knew when he agreed to the treaty that isolated you at the pack's edge, away from the moonstone deposits where your true nature might be discovered. Betrayal, cold and sharp, sliced through Liana. Her gaze sought Jace automatically, looking for denial, for some indication that he hadn't been part of this deception. His averted eyes told her everything. The bond, she whispered, understanding blooming like a poisonous flower. You rejected our bond because you knew what I was. Jace finally met her gaze, his expression torn between regret and determination. I rejected it to protect you, he said quietly. Moonstone bloods don't survive long once their nature is revealed. Keeping you isolated, keeping you ordinary, was the only way to ensure your safety. By breaking my heart. The words escaped before she could stop them, raw with fresh pain. By breaking a minor bond before a stronger one could form. Jace glanced toward Rowan, his meaning clear. Before an alpha could claim you and use your abilities for his own gain. Rowan's laughter was unexpected, a deep sound that carried no humor. A noble story, Beta Holt. But we both know the truth. You rejected her because a moonstone blood can't be controlled, not even by the mate bond. Your pack has kept her ignorant and isolated not to protect her, but to ensure she never discovered her worth. The gathered wolves had gone utterly still, witnessing a confrontation that would reshape pack hierarchies. And what do you want with her, Alpha Stone? Jace challenged. A weapon to tip the balance of power? A tool to enhance your pack's strength? Rowan's expression hardened. What I want, he said deliberately, is to give her a choice. Something Redstone has never offered. With calculated precision, he turned to Liana, ignoring everyone else in the circle. Moonstone bloods can amplify the power of the stones 100-fold. They can heal wounds that would kill others, strengthen bonds between mates, even communicate across vast distances. For centuries, they were revered as the moon goddess's chosen vessels. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Until fear replaced reverence. Until alphas realized that moonstone bloods couldn't be commanded through traditional pack bonds, that they answered to a higher calling. So they were hunted, Liana finished, pieces of history she'd never been taught falling into place. Eliminated from the bloodlines. Or so we were told. Rowan's eyes blazed with that otherworldly blue. Until you. The implications staggered her. Everything she'd believed about herself, her place in the pack, her rejection, her isolated existence, had been built on lies. Elder Maya's parting words suddenly took on new meaning. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, child, had the old healer known? Had she been preparing Liana for this moment? As the silver light continued to pulse beneath her skin, something shifted in Liana's core, not just understanding, but power. Ancient, untamed power that had lain dormant until awakened by moonstone and moonlight. And by the presence of an alpha strong enough to withstand its force. The realization struck with crystal clarity. The pull she felt toward Rowan wasn't just attraction or the promise of a new bond. It was recognition, one rare being acknowledging another. What happens now? She asked, her voice stronger than she expected. Alpha Morgan stepped forward, breaking the spell of the moment. Nothing happens. You are Redstone, regardless of bloodline. This revelation changes nothing about your pack obligations. It changes everything, Rowan countered, never taking his eyes from Liana. Because now she knows what she is. What she can become. His voice dropped lower, meant only for her. And what we could be together. The air between them crackled with possibility. Jace moved to Liana's side, his voice urgent. Don't listen to him. Whatever he's offering comes with chains you can't see yet. And staying with those who lied to me doesn't, she challenged, the silver light flaring brighter with her emotion. As the three wolves faced each other in the center of the circle, Beta, Alpha, and a newly awakened force none fully understood, Liana felt the weight of choice pressing down upon her. Stay with the pack that had hidden her true nature, where the man who rejected her now claimed it was for her protection. Or follow the Alpha whose territory called to something primal within her, whose glacial eyes promised power and partnership in equal measure. Or perhaps, a third path entirely. The moonstone on the table pulsed in rhythm with the light beneath her skin, offering yet unspoken possibilities. Under the watching moon, surrounded by wolves who now looked at her with newfound fear and wonder, Liana straightened her spine and prepared to claim her destiny, whatever shape it might take. Power tasted like lightning on her tongue, ancient and electric, as the silver light spiraled through Liana's veins. For 17 years she'd lived as shadow and whisper, now she stood luminous, the forgotten blood of her ancestors singing beneath her skin, making wolves who had never spared her a second glance unable to look away. "I choose myself," Liana declared, her voice carrying across the ceremonial circle with newfound authority. The gathered wolves shifted uneasily. An omega rejecting both an alpha and a beta's guidance was unprecedented. The silver light emanating from her skin cast eerie shadows across shocked faces, transforming the familiar pack grounds into something otherworldly. Alpha Morgan recovered first, his weathered features hardening into the mask of command that had kept Redstone Pack in line for decades. "This is not a matter of choice, healer. You are Redstone. Your abilities, however unexpected, belong to this pack. My abilities belong to me." Liana reached for the moonstone on the table, wrapping her fingers around it deliberately. The stone responded instantly, its glow intensifying until it seemed she held a captured star in her palm. "As does my future." Jace stepped forward, his expression torn between admiration and alarm. "Liana, think about what you're doing." Moonstone Bloods were hunted because they couldn't be controlled. Because they threatened the very structure of pack hierarchy. "Is that meant to convince me to stay?" She arched an eyebrow, a confidence she'd never possessed before straightening her spine. "You've just admitted your pack sees me as a threat." "Not a threat," Jace insisted. "A responsibility. We protected you." "You isolated me," she corrected. "You rejected me. You buried my truth so deeply I couldn't even feel it beneath my skin." Her gaze swept over the redstone wolves, lingering on familiar faces that now looked at her with wary uncertainty. "How many of you knew? How many watched me struggle to find my place, knowing all along what I truly was?" The uncomfortable silence was answer enough. "And you," she turned to Rowan, whose glacial eyes hadn't left her once during the confrontation. "You knew from the moment you caught my scent. Why reveal me now, after generations of secrecy?" Something like respect flickered across his features. "Because the moonstones are dying." The revelation sent a ripple of shock through both packs. The sacred stones had been the source of both packs' power for centuries, their healing properties, their enhancement of wolf abilities, their strengthening of territory bonds. "That's impossible," Alpha Morgan growled. "The harvest has been consistent for generations." "The quantity, yes," Rowan agreed, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "But not the quality. Not the power." His gaze returned to Liana. "The stones respond to blood. Without moonstone bloods to connect with them, to rejuvenate their essence, they're becoming inert. Ordinary rock with a pretty glow." Comprehension dawned across Liana's face. "That's why you requested me for the negotiations. You needed to confirm what I was." Rowan nodded, a predatory smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I followed your scent across territories because it called to something ancient in my blood. Something that recognized what you could be." His voice dropped lower. "What we could be together." Pretty words from a wolf with an agenda, Jace cut in, positioning himself between them. "Don't let him manipulate you, Liana. Whatever he's offering comes with chains." "And what exactly are you offering, Beta?" Rowan's tone held dangerous amusement. "A return to shadows?" A life of hiding her light to maintain your pack's comfortable hierarchy? His eyes narrowed. Or perhaps a reconsideration of your rejection, now that you see her true worth? The accusations struck true. Jace's expression flickered with guilt before hardening into resolve. I'm offering protection from those who would exploit her abilities. Like you've been doing for 17 years? Rowan countered. Enough! Liana's command silenced both males, the silver light flaring with her emotion. I won't be fought over like territory to be claimed. With deliberate movements, she placed the moonstone back on the table, though the glow beneath her skin continued unabated. The power awakened within her couldn't be contained again. She felt it stretching, seeking, connecting with something deep beneath the earth. The moonstone deposits, she murmured, suddenly understanding. I can feel them. Rowan nodded, unsurprised. The legends say moonstone bloods could communicate with the stones, direct their energy, even shape their growth. Which is precisely why such abilities must be used for the benefit of Pack, Alpha Morgan interjected. Under proper guidance. Your guidance, you mean, Liana replied, a new edge to her voice. Tell me, Alpha, if you truly believed keeping me ignorant was for my protection, why station me at the border cabin? Why not keep me close, where I could be watched more carefully? Morgan's silence was telling. The border cabin sits directly above the largest moonstone deposit, Rowan explained, watching her face as understanding dawned. They've been using your presence, your blood, to maintain the stone's power without your knowledge. Draining you like a battery. The betrayal cut deeper than any rejection. Every night of exhaustion she'd attributed to loneliness, every morning of unexplained weakness, all while her essence was being siphoned to maintain the pack's power source. Is this true? She addressed Elder Maya, who stood among the senior pack members, her weathered face unreadable. The old healer stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of years. We did what was necessary for the survival of all. One life in service to many. Without her consent, Rowan growled. Without her knowledge of what it was costing her. And what would you do differently, Alpha Stone? Maya challenged. Use her openly instead of in secret? The result is the same, her power-serving pack needs. The difference, Rowan countered, is choice. Partnership rather than exploitation. The word partnership hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Not servitude. Not subservience. Equal standing with an alpha, a concept radical enough to send fresh murmurs through the gathered wolves. Liana closed her eyes, reaching inward to the newly awakened power flowing through her veins. With it came understanding, not complete, but enough to glimpse the truth behind centuries of secrecy and manipulation. The moonstones aren't just tools, she said, her eyes still closed as she connected with the energy beneath her feet. They're alive. Sentient, in their way. They haven't been dying, they've been withdrawing. Retreating from those who use without giving in return. When she opened her eyes, the silver light had intensified, transforming her amber irises to luminous quicksilver. Both packs took involuntary steps backward, recognizing power that transcended their hierarchies. All except Rowan, who moved closer, drawn to her light like shadow to flame. The covenant has been broken, Liana continued, knowledge flowing through her from a source she couldn't name. The original agreement between the first Moonstone Bloods and the stones themselves. Balance must be restored. What covenant? Alpha Morgan demanded. What agreement? One your pack conveniently forgot, Rowan said, his eyes never leaving Liana. The moonstone deposits weren't discovered by your ancestors, they were entrusted to them by the Moonstone Bloods, with the promise that the stones would be honored, not exploited. Liana nodded, the ancient knowledge continuing to unfold within her. The stones require balance, energy given, not just taken. The Moonstone Bloods were the conduits of that exchange until fear led to their elimination. Which is why the stones now barely sustain our packs, Rowan added. Without Moonstone Bloods to complete the cycle, the energy only flows one way. Taking without giving back. The implications were staggering. Both packs depended on the stones for everything from healing to territory protection. If the Moonstones truly failed, it would mean vulnerability to rival packs, increased mortality, perhaps even the dissolution of centuries-old bloodlines. Then what must be done? Jace asked, pragmatism overcoming his personal feelings. How do we restore this balance? Liana looked from him to Alpha Morgan, then to the Midnight Crest Wolves watching with barely concealed fascination. First, acknowledgement of the truth. No more secrets. No more treating Moonstone Bloods as tools to be used or threats to be controlled. Alpha Morgan bristled at being dictated terms by an Omega, but desperation tempered his pride. And then? Then I go to the source. Liana turned toward the mountains that rose beyond the pack grounds, where the ancient caves housed the deepest moonstone deposits. Alone. Not alone. Rowan's voice brooked no argument. The caves amplify moonstone energy 100-fold. Without guidance, without anchoring, the power could overwhelm even a born Moonstone Blood. Your guidance, I suppose? Jace's voice dripped with skepticism. My bloodline has maintained the original knowledge, Rowan replied evenly. While Redstone worked to eliminate Moonstone Bloods, Midnight Crest protected their legacy, preserved their teachings. Waited for their return. Another revelation clicked into place in Liana's mind. That's why you personally came for the negotiations. You sensed me. Rowan nodded, something like vulnerability flickering across his usually guarded features. My grandmother was the last known Moonstone Blood. Her final prophecy spoke of another who would rise when the stones began to fade, one who would either restore the Covenant or witness the end of both our packs. The weight of destiny settled around Liana's shoulders, heavier than any Alpha's command. All her life, she'd longed for purpose, for belonging. Now purpose had found her in the most unexpected way. The full moon peaks at midnight, she said, decision crystallizing. I'll go to the caves then, when the connection between moon and stone is strongest. I'll accompany you, both males said simultaneously, then glared at each other with undisguised hostility. Liana shook her head. This isn't about pack rivalry or male posturing. This is about survival. Her gaze settled on Rowan. You said your bloodline preserved the knowledge of the Covenant. I need that knowledge. Something like triumph flashed in his eyes, quickly masked. Then I'll guide you. And I'll ensure Redstone's interests are protected, Jace insisted. No. Liana's refusal was gentle but firm. Your presence would only complicate things. The beta who rejected the bond trying to claim authority now that my value is apparent? She shook her head. The stones would sense the imbalance. Hurt flashed across Jace's features before understanding reluctantly took its place. And his motives are pure? Not pure, Rowan answered before Liana could, surprising them both with his honesty. I want her. I have since the moment her scent reached me across the river. But I also respect what she is, what she represents. His gaze held hers, intense and unwavering. I don't seek to control the power of a Moonstone Blood, I seek to join with it. Partner with it. Honor it as my ancestors swore to do. The raw truth in his words resonated through the bond that had begun forming between them, not the traditional mate bond of pack hierarchy, but something older, deeper, rooted in the very earth beneath their feet. The decision is made, Liana announced, stepping away from both packs to stand as her own entity. At midnight, Alpha Stone and I will enter the caves. Until then, I require solitude to prepare. No one moved to stop her as she walked away from the ceremonial circle, the silver light illuminating her path. Whispers followed in her wake, fear, wonder, speculation, but for the first time in her life, Liana didn't shrink from the attention. She wasn't running from their stares now. She was walking toward her destiny. As the gathered wolves dispersed, arguments already breaking out between packs, Liana made her way to the small meditation garden at the edge of the grounds. There, surrounded by moonflowers that opened their pale blossoms to the night sky, she sought to center herself in the face of revelations that had shattered everything she thought she knew. She sensed him before she heard his approach, Rowan's presence registering as both intrusion and completion, a paradox that mirrored everything about their connection. You should be preparing with your pack, she said without turning. My place is here. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body but not touching. Respecting boundaries even as he challenged them. With you. Liana turned to study him, this alpha who had crossed territories and broken protocols to find her. In the moonlight, his features seemed carved from shadow and silver, beautiful in a way that made her wolf stir with primitive recognition. Why me? She asked finally, the question that had burned since their first encounter. Of all the wolves in all the packs, why was I born with this blood? Why was I the one left orphaned on Redstone's doorstep, raised in ignorance of my own nature? Rowan's expression softened with something like tenderness, unexpected from a wolf known for ruthless command. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, little healer. The echo of Elder Maya's words from a different mouth sent a shiver down Liana's spine. My grandmother spoke of balance before she died, Rowan continued. That what was sundered would be rejoined. That what was hidden would be revealed. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek without touching. That what was broken would be made whole. The air between them thickened with possibility, with unspoken promises that transcended pack law and wolf hierarchy. And if I choose neither you nor Jace, she challenged. If I claim my power for myself alone? His smile held both approval and hunger. Then you would truly honor your bloodline. Moonstone bloods were never meant to be possessed, only partnered with. His eyes gleamed with that impossible blue. But know this, Liana of the silver blood, while I would never cage your power, I will pursue your heart until the last moonstone fades from this earth. Not because of what you are, but because from the moment I caught your scent on the wind, my wolf has known no peace. Nor has the man. The naked honesty in his declaration stole her breath. No manipulation. No pretense. Just truth, offered without expectation. I can't think about that now, she said finally. Not with the covenant waiting. Not with both our pack's survival hanging in the balance. Rowan nodded, accepting her boundary without retreat. Then we prepare. Separately. But when midnight comes, his gaze intensified, burning into her with all the force of an alpha's will. When midnight comes, we face the stones together. As equals. Equals. The word hung between them, revolutionary and ancient all at once. As Rowan turned to leave, Liana called after him. What if I fail? What if the power overwhelms me, or the stones reject my blood after so many years of misuse? He looked back, his expression holding absolute certainty. You won't fail. I've seen your light, Liana. I've felt your strength. A smile curved his lips, predatory and protective in equal measure. And I'll be right beside you, ready to catch you if you fall. Or to fall with you, if that's what fate demands. With those words, he left her to her preparations, disappearing into the shadows as the moon continued its climb toward midnight, toward the moment when everything would change. For both their packs. For the sacred stones that pulsed beneath the earth. And for the Omega healer who stood poised between worlds, silver light flowing through her veins, destiny calling her name with a voice as ancient as the moon itself. The cave entrance pulsed like a living heartbeat, ancient symbols carved into stone glowing silver blue as they approached. Liana felt the power recognizing her, not as intruder, but as kin returning after a long exile. Blood calling to blood across generations of silence. Midnight had transformed the mountain. What appeared as an ordinary rock face during daylight hours now revealed itself as an intricately carved portal, the symbols telling a story Liana somehow understood despite never having seen them before. The history of her kind, written in a language only Moonstone blood could read. "They're welcoming you home," Rowan murmured, standing close enough that she felt his warmth against the night's chill. The journey to the sacred caves had been tense, both packs escorting them to the base of the mountain before being ordered to remain behind. Only Liana and Rowan would enter, the Moonstone blood and her chosen guide. The significance of that choice still hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. "Not home," she corrected softly. "I've never been here before. Your blood has." His hand hovered near the small of her back, not quite touching, ever mindful of boundaries. The stones remember even when flesh forgets. The silver light beneath Liana's skin had grown steadier, no longer pulsing erratically but flowing in smooth currents through her veins. Her connection to the moonstone deposits sharpened with each step closer to the mountain's heart, countless crystalline nodes singing to her from deep within the earth. At the threshold, she hesitated. What will happen inside? Rowan's expression grew solemn. Truth. Revelation. Perhaps communion with those who came before. His glacial eyes studied her face. My grandmother would enter the caves during critical moments and emerge changed, not just in power, but in understanding. Did she ever speak of what she saw? Only that it was different for each Moonstone blood. That the caves revealed what was needed, not what was wanted. His voice dropped lower. And that no one who entered with deception in their heart survived the experience. The warning hung in the air between them as Liana turned back to the illuminated entrance. Then we'd better be honest with each other, hadn't we? Without waiting for his response, she stepped across the threshold, the ancient symbols flaring brighter at her passage. Rowan followed a heartbeat later, his powerful frame moving with predatory grace. The outer tunnel appeared natural at first glance, rough stone walls, occasional stalactites hanging from the ceiling. But as they ventured deeper, evidence of ancient craftsmanship emerged. The floor smoothed beneath their feet, the walls straightened, and embedded throughout the stone were veins of raw moonstone that illuminated their path with cool, silver light. The main deposits are still miles beneath us, Rowan explained, his voice hushed in the cathedral-like space. But the entire mountain is threaded with moonstone veins, like a circulatory system. A heart, Liana murmured, understanding intuitively. We're walking through the heart of something ancient. As they rounded a bend in the tunnel, the passage opened suddenly into a vast chamber that stole the breath from her lungs. The ceiling soared overhead, invisible in the darkness, while the walls glittered with thousands of moonstone crystals in various stages of growth. At the center stood a raised dais of polished stone, and atop it, a pool of water so still it mirrored the crystal-studded ceiling like a second sky. The communion chamber, Rowan breathed, awe evident in his voice. My grandmother described it, but Words fail, Liana completed, drawn forward by forces she couldn't name. As she approached the dais, the silver light beneath her skin began to harmonize with the chamber's glow, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced across the ancient stone. The pool's surface rippled without wind, responding to her presence. "What happens now?" she asked, stopping at the edge of the dais. "Now I step back," Rowan replied, surprising her. "This part of the journey is yours alone." His expression held no deception, only quiet certainty. "The communion cannot be shared or witnessed." Fear flickered through her, not of the unknown power awaiting her, but of facing it without his steady presence beside her. In the short time since their paths had crossed, Rowan had become an anchor, a counterbalance to the overwhelming changes sweeping through her life. As if sensing her thoughts, he stepped closer, finally breaching the careful distance he'd maintained. His hand cupped her cheek, warm against her cool skin. "I'll be right here," he promised, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her bones. "Nothing in this mountain will harm you while I breathe." The fierce protectiveness in his declaration should have chafed against her newfound independence. Instead, it wrapped around her like armor, not confinement but reinforcement. Not possession but partnership. Without overthinking, Liana lifted her hand to his, pressing his palm more firmly against her cheek. The contact sent silver light spiraling from the point where their skin met, creating intricate patterns that flowed between them like liquid starlight. Rowan's sharp intake of breath echoed in the chamber. "Liana." Her name on his lips sounded like prayer and possession combined. The air between them thickened with unspoken possibility, with desires postponed but not denied. For one suspended moment, Liana thought he might close the final distance between them, claim the kiss that had hovered as possibility since their first encounter at the river's edge. Instead, with visible effort, he stepped back. "The communion awaits," he reminded her, his voice roughened with restraint. "The rest, after." That single word, asterisk after asterisk, held worlds of promise. Liana nodded, gathering her courage as she turned back to the waiting pool. "How will I know what to do?" she asked, one foot on the first step of the dais. "You already know," Rowan answered simply. "Trust your blood. It remembers." Taking a deep breath, Liana ascended the 7 steps to the pool's edge. Up close, she could see that the water wasn't water at all. It was liquid moonstone, silver and luminous, rippling with energy that called to the power flowing through her veins. Without conscious decision, she knelt at the pool's edge and extended her hand, palm hovering just above the shimmering surface. The liquid responded, rising up in a delicate column to meet her touch. The moment contact was made, the chamber disappeared. Liana found herself standing in a vast, starlit void, neither earth nor sky surrounding her, only endless space punctuated by distant points of light. Before her stood a circle of figures, wolves in human form, their skin illuminated from within by the same silver light that now flowed through her own veins, asterisk. Asterisk blood of our blood, they spoke in unison, voices neither male nor female but somehow both. You have returned at the hour of greatest need. Asterisk. Asterisk, who are you? Liana asked, though part of her already knew the answer, asterisk. Asterisk the first, replied the central figure, stepping forward. A woman with Liana's features but older, wiser, her silver-streaked hair flowing unbound around her shoulders. The original covenant makers. Those who bound our blood to the sacred stones when the world was young. Asterisk. Asterisk, I don't understand, Liana admitted. What covenant? What happened to the Moonstone Bloods? Why was I left ignorant of my heritage? Asterisk. Asterisk the first smiled, a gentle expression that somehow held both compassion and sorrow. So many questions. But time grows short. The balance has tilted too far. The stones withdraw their blessing. Asterisk. Because the covenant was broken, Liana guessed, recalling what she'd instinctively known at the pack grounds. Asterisk yes and no. The first gestured, and the void around them transformed, revealing images of ancient wolves working in harmony with glowing moonstone crystals. In the beginning, the stones were sentient beings, entities of pure energy who chose to share their power with our kind. Not as tools to be used, but as partners in creation. Asterisk. The scene shifted, showing moonstone-lit ceremonies, healings, protections, wolves and stones in perfect symbiosis. Asterisk the covenant was simple, the first continued. Balance. Energy freely given and received. The stones amplified our natural abilities, while our blood nourished their growth, their consciousness. Asterisk. But something changed, Liana said, watching as the harmonious images darkened, showing conflict, fear, wolves turning against each other. Asterisk power corrupts. The first's expression hardened. Alphas began to fear those they couldn't control. Moonstone Blood's answer to a higher calling than pack hierarchy. We cannot be commanded through traditional bonds. Our alliance with the stones placed us beyond alpha authority. Asterisk. Asterisk understanding dawned. So they eliminated the threat. Asterisk. Asterisk they tried. The circle of ancestors moved closer, their light intensifying. But our bloodline persisted, hidden, diluted, forgotten, but never completely extinguished. And now, at the moment when the stones prepare to withdraw completely, you have awakened. Asterisk. Asterisk the weight of destiny pressed down on Liana's shoulders. What am I supposed to do? How can one moonstone blood restore a covenant broken generations ago? Asterisk. Asterisk not alone, the first said, her gaze piercing through centuries. No moonstone blood was meant to bear this burden alone. Which is why the goddess always provides a counterbalance. Asterisk. Asterisk the void shifted again, revealing Rowan's image, not as he appeared now, but connected to figures from the past. His bloodline, Liana realized. Wolves whose eyes held that same glacial blue, whose posture reflected that same uncompromising strength. Asterisk. Asterisk the stone alphas, the first explained. Guardians of the covenant when others sought to destroy it. Protectors of our bloodline when others hunted us to extinction. Asterisk. Asterisk Rowan, Liana whispered, the pieces falling into place. His grandmother was the last known moonstone blood. He said he'd been waiting. Asterisk. Asterisk for you, the first completed. Though neither of you fully understood what you were waiting for. Her expression softened with something like maternal pride. The bond between stone alpha and moonstone blood transcends traditional mating. It is balance incarnate, power meeting power as equals. Asterisk. Asterisk the revelation echoed through Liana's being. Not domination. Not submission. Partnership between forces meant to complement each other. Asterisk. Asterisk but what about the covenant? She pressed, sensing time growing short as the void around them began to flicker. How do I restore it? Asterisk. Asterisk through blood freely given, the first answered. Through union with your counterbalance. Through acknowledging the stones not as tools but as entities deserving of respect. Her form began to fade, the circle of ancestors dimming. The path lies before you, daughter of our line. The choice, as it has always been for our kind, remains yours. Asterisk. Asterisk. As the vision dissolved around her, the first final words echoed through the fading void. Remember, blood calls to blood. Stone calls to stone. And what the goddess has joined, let no wolf tear asunder. Asterisk. Liana came back to herself with a gasp, finding her hands still touching the liquid moonstone pool. The silver light beneath her skin had intensified to almost blinding radiance, illuminating the entire chamber. Liana. Rowan's voice reached her through the dazzling light, concern evident in his tone. Are you all right? Slowly, she withdrew her hand from the pool and turned to face him. The knowledge imparted by her ancestors hummed through her blood, transforming her understanding of everything, her past, her present, and the wolf who stood watching her with those impossible blue eyes. I saw them, she said simply. The first. The original covenant makers. Her gaze locked with his, seeing him truly for the first time. And I saw you, Rowan Stone. Or rather, what you are to me. He went very still, the predator in him recognizing the moment of truth. And what am I to you, Liana of the silver blood? The question hung between them, weighted with centuries of history neither had known they carried. With deliberate movements, Liana descended the dais steps, closing the distance until she stood directly before him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his powerful frame, to catch the scent that had called to her across territories and bloodlines. My counterbalance, she answered softly. My guardian. My equal. Her hand rose to hover over his heart, not quite touching. The other half of a covenant written in our blood before either of us drew breath. Rowan's control, always so absolute, wavered visibly. His eyes blazed that otherworldly blue, his breathing quickened. And is that what you choose? This covenant? This balance? The question contained multitudes. Was she accepting the responsibility of her bloodline? The connection to the stones? The bond with him that transcended traditional pack structures? Instead of answering with words, Liana closed the final distance between them, pressing her palm flat against his chest. Silver light spiraled from the point of contact, creating intricate patterns that wrapped around them both like living vines of liquid starlight. I choose truth, she whispered, lifting her face to his. I choose power honored rather than feared. I choose partnership over dominance. Her free hand rose to cup his jaw, fingers tracing the scar that marked his otherwise perfect features. I choose you, Rowan Stone. Not because fate demands it, but because my wolf, my heart, will accept nothing less. Something broke in Rowan's careful composure, not weakness but release. With a sound that was half growl, half reverent sigh, he finally claimed her mouth with his. The kiss ignited the silver light between them, transforming it from gentle glow to blinding radiance. The chamber around them responded, moonstone crystals pulsing in rhythm with their heartbeats, singing with awakened energy that had slumbered for generations. Beneath their feet, the mountain itself seemed to shift, not in violence but in recognition. The ancient stones, so long deprived of genuine connection, responding to the renewed covenant taking physical form in their embrace. When they finally broke apart, breathless and transformed, the chamber had changed. The moonstone crystals glowed with renewed vitality, and the pool had risen from its basin to form a hovering sphere of liquid light at the dais center. The stones are awakening, Rowan murmured, wonder evident in his voice despite his visible struggle to regain composure. His arms remained firmly around Liana's waist, as if he feared she might dissolve into silver light before his eyes. They're responding to the covenant, she confirmed, understanding flowing through her blood. But it's not complete yet. This is just the beginning. His eyes darkened with comprehension. "Blood freely given," he quoted. "Union with your counterbalance." The phrases from her vision hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Not just partnership in principle, but in flesh. The covenant renewed through the most ancient of wolf rituals, the claiming of mates whose bond transcended pack politics. "Not here," Liana said softly, though her body hummed with awareness of how perfectly they fit together. "Not like this. The covenant requires witness. Acknowledgement from both our packs." Disappointment flickered across Rowan's features, quickly masked by understanding. "You're right," he agreed, though his hands tightened fractionally at her waist. "This isn't just about us. It's about restoring balance to both packs, to the stones themselves." Liana smiled, lifting one hand to trace the strong line of his jaw. "But make no mistake, Alpha Stone," she murmured, allowing her wolf to surface just enough to flash golden eyes at him. "When the time comes, I will claim you as thoroughly as you claim me." The promise sent visible heat through Rowan's powerful frame, his control slipping enough to reveal elongated canines. "Be careful with such promises, little healer," he growled softly. "You may find yourself claimed sooner than you anticipate." The air between them crackled with promise postponed but not denied. With visible effort, they stepped apart, though the silver light continued to flow between them like an unbreakable tether. "We should return," Liana said, glancing toward the tunnel that would lead them back to the waiting packs. "They'll be growing restless by now." Rowan nodded, though his gaze remained fixed on her face, as if memorizing every detail. "And what will you tell them? About the covenant? About us?" The question gave her pause. Hours ago, she had been a rejected Omega with no place in either pack. Now she stood revealed as something ancient and powerful, bonded to an Alpha whose very existence challenged everything she'd been taught about pack hierarchy. The truth, she decided finally. That the stones are sentient beings, not tools to be exploited. That the covenant requires balance, energy given and received. That the Moonstone Bloods were never meant to be controlled or feared, but honored as conduits of that exchange. "And about us?" Rowan pressed, something vulnerable flickering beneath his alpha confidence. Liana smiled, reaching for his hand and twining their fingers together, silver light spiraling around their joined grip. "That what the goddess has joined, let no wolf tear asunder." Together, illuminated by renewed covenant and ancient power, they turned toward the tunnel that would lead them back to a world forever changed by truth revealed and balance restored. Behind them, the liquid moonstone sphere pulsed with anticipation, as if the stones themselves approved of choices made and promises exchanged beneath the mountain's heart. Silver light marked their path as they emerged from the mountain's heart, not as the wolves who had entered, uncertain, searching, but as living embodiments of a covenant reborn. The gathered packs fell to their knees as one, instinct overriding hierarchy as Liana's radiance threw shadows across the midnight clearing like a second moon descended to earth. Alpha Morgan was the first to recover, struggling to maintain dignity even as the primal part of him recognized power that transcended his own. "What happened in there?" he demanded, voice sharp with fear disguised as authority. Liana's gaze swept across the assembled wolves, Redstone and Midnight Crest alike, their differences momentarily forgotten in the face of something ancient awakening before them. Her hand remained firmly clasped with Rowan's, the silver light flowing between them in elaborate patterns that seemed to write themselves across their joined skin. "Truth," she answered simply, the word carrying weight beyond its single syllable. "The covenant has begun its restoration." Murmurs rippled through both packs. Older wolves crossed protective symbols over their chests, while younger ones stared in undisguised fascination. Jace pushed forward, his expression a complex mixture of awe and regret as he took in the visible connection between Liana and Rowan. "What covenant?" What does this mean for the packs? It means change, Rowan answered, his deep voice carrying across the clearing. It means returning to balance that was lost generations ago. The moonstone deposits were never just resources to be harvested, Liana continued, the knowledge flowing through her as naturally as breath. They're sentient entities that chose to share their power with wolfkind. In exchange, they required respect, reciprocity, energy given as well as received. Elder Maya stepped forward, her weathered face illuminated by Liana's glow. The old stories, she murmured. They spoke of living stones, of blood that sang beneath the moon. Her gaze sharpened as she studied the silver light flowing between Liana and Rowan. And of bonds that transcended pack law. That's right, Liana confirmed. The Moonstone Bloods were never meant to be controlled by traditional pack hierarchies. They served as intermediaries between wolves and stones, guardians of balance, protectors of covenant. Until fear led to their persecution, Rowan added, his grip tightening fractionally around Liana's hand. Until alphas decided that power they couldn't command was power too dangerous to exist. Alpha Morgan bristled visibly. You speak of ancient history as if it condemns us now. My pack took you in, he addressed Liana directly, protected you when you were orphaned. Protected me? Liana's laugh held no humor. You isolated me. Used me. Stationed me above the largest moonstone deposit so my blood could sustain the stones without my knowledge or consent. Her voice hardened with newfound authority. You rejected me through your beta when the mate bond threatened to give me standing within the pack. Jace flinched at the public accusation, but didn't deny it. We did what we thought necessary for pack survival. At my expense, Liana countered. At the expense of covenant that could have strengthened both our packs beyond measure. The gathered wolves shifted uneasily, the implications of centuries of deception settling like stones around their shoulders. Both alphas recognized the precarious position they now occupied, their authority undermined not by challenge but by truth older than their bloodlines. What happens now? Someone called from the Midnight Crest ranks. Will the stones withdraw completely? Liana turned toward the mountain, feeling the renewed pulse of energy flowing from the awakened deposits. No, she said with quiet certainty. The covenant is being restored, but it requires acknowledgement from both packs. Recognition of past wrongs. Commitment to new balance. And what would this balance entail? Alpha Morgan asked, careful diplomacy replacing his earlier aggression. The stones will continue to share their power, Rowan explained, enhancing healing, strengthening territories, blessing bloodlines as they have for centuries. But no longer one-sided. No longer taken without reciprocity. What kind of reciprocity? Jace pressed, practical even in the face of revelation. Liana smiled, the expression transforming her face with knowledge centuries old yet newly remembered. Rituals of gratitude. Energy freely given through communion with the stones. Protection of the sacred caves. Her gaze swept meaningfully across both packs. And recognition of Moonstone Bloods not as tools to be used or threats to be controlled, but as essential partners in covenant. The implications hung heavy in the midnight air. Centuries of pack structure challenged. Hierarchies questioned. Power redistributed. And the two of you? Maya asked, her perceptive gaze fixed on the silver light still flowing between their joined hands. The bond forming between Moonstone Blood and Stone Alpha, what does that mean for pack boundaries? The question cut to the heart of practical concerns. Liana belonged to Redstone. Rowan led Midnight Crest. Their territories were distinct, separated by river and tradition older than memory. The original covenant recognized no such boundaries, Liana replied, the truth flowing through her blood. The stones exist beneath both territories, connected regardless of pack divisions above ground. Are you suggesting we merge packs? Alpha Morgan's voice rang with alarm, echoed by uneasy murmurs from both sides. No, Rowan answered, his tone measured and diplomatic despite the power thrumming through his frame. The covenant doesn't require dissolution of pack identity. His gaze met Liana's, something private and intense passing between them before he continued. But it does require recognition of bonds that transcend those boundaries. Understanding dawned across the gathered faces. Not just political alliance. Not just treaty. A mating bond between Moonstone blood and Stone Alpha that would connect the packs in ways unprecedented in living memory. Impossible, one of Morgan's senior wolves objected. An Omega from our pack cannot mate an Alpha from Midnight Crest. The imbalance. There is no imbalance, Liana interrupted, her voice carrying new authority that silenced objection instantly. I am not merely an Omega healer. I am Moonstone blood, last of my line as Rowan is last of his. Our union was written in covenant before either of our packs drew breath. The silver light surrounding them pulsed in affirmation, briefly intensifying until several wolves had to shield their eyes. The stones have recognized their chosen vessels, Elder Maya confirmed, her weathered face alight with wonder as she studied the illuminated pair. To deny this bond would be to reject the covenant once more. Alpha Morgan's expression hardened with the realization that control was slipping through his fingers. And if we refuse these terms? If we reject this covenant? The question hung in the air, heavy with challenge. Liana released Rowan's hand and stepped forward, facing both alphas directly. The silver light didn't diminish with the broken contact, if anything, it intensified, wrapping around her like living armor. Then the stones will withdraw completely, she said simply. No more enhanced healing. No more territory protections. No more blessed bloodlines. Her gaze swept across familiar faces, wolves who had ignored her for years now hanging on her every word. Both packs would be vulnerable to rivals within a single generation. The stark reality settled over the gathering. Without Moonstone, their way of life would collapse. Their strength would diminish. Their territories would become indefensible. There must be another way, Jace interjected, stepping closer to Liana. Some compromise that doesn't upend centuries of tradition. This isn't about tradition, Rowan countered, moving to stand beside Liana once more. It's about returning to truth that existed before your traditions were established. And about choice, Liana added, her gaze finding Jace's with calm certainty. You made yours when you rejected our bond. I've made mine in claiming what was always meant to be. The words struck with precision, silencing further objection. Jace's expression shifted from resistance to reluctant acceptance as he recognized the unassailable truth in her declaration. Alpha Morgan exchanged glances with his senior wolves, calculating rapidly as options dwindled. We will need time to consider these revelations, he said finally, diplomatic once more. To consult our histories, to prepare our pack for such fundamental changes. Of course, Rowan agreed, surprising many with his reasonable tone. The covenant doesn't demand immediate transformation. Only acknowledgement of truth and commitment to restoration. And what of you two in the meantime? Maya asked, the question that hung unspoken in the air. The bond between you grows stronger by the moment. It won't be denied much longer. The air between Liana and Rowan thickened with unacknowledged desire, with promise postponed but not forgotten. The silver light pulsed in rhythm with their accelerated heartbeats, betraying what diplomacy attempted to mask. "By pack law and ancient right," Rowan announced, his voice carrying across the clearing, "I claim Liana of the Silver Blood as my mate." His glacial eyes never left her face as he continued. "Not as alpha claiming subordinate, but as equal joining equal. Not as pack claiming resource, but as covenant fulfilled." The formal declaration sent ripples of shock through both gatherings. Not because the claim was unexpected, the bond forming between them was visible to all, but because of its phrasing. No alpha in living memory had claimed a mate as equal. All eyes turned to Liana, waiting for her response to this unprecedented declaration. With deliberate movements, she stepped closer to Rowan, silver light blazing between them like captured stars. "And I," she replied, her voice clear and unwavering, "claim Rowan Stone as my mate. Not as vessel seeking protection, but as power acknowledging power. Not as divided loyalty, but as covenant made whole." As their declarations hung in the night air, the mountain behind them responded. A pulse of silver light erupted from the cave entrance, shooting skyward like a beacon. Across both territories, wolves would later report seeing the light spill from the earth itself, moonstone deposits awakening as one, recognizing the renewed covenant taking form beneath the watching moon. The claiming words still hung in the air when Jace lunged forward, desperation overwhelming reason as he witnessed the mate he had rejected being claimed by another. His partial shift happened mid-leap, claws extending, teeth lengthening, a primal reaction to losing what he had once discarded as unworthy. "No," he snarled, the sound more wolf than human as he charged toward the glowing pair. What happened next would be whispered about for generations. Without touching him, without even looking in his direction, Liana simply raised her hand. The silver light surrounding her pulsed once, and Jace froze midair, suspended as if time itself had stopped around his form. "Enough," she said quietly, finally turning to face him. "This choice was made the moment you rejected our bond." The gathered wolves stared in silent awe. No moonstone blood in living memory had demonstrated such control over their power, such absolute command of the energy flowing through their veins. Liana gently lowered her hand, allowing Jace to settle back onto solid ground, the disrupted shift receding until he stood fully human once more. His expression cycled rapidly through shock, anger, and finally, reluctant understanding. "He can't protect you like I could have," Jace said hoarsely, a final desperate attempt. "He doesn't know you like I do." "You never knew me at all," Liana answered, no accusation in her tone, only simple truth. "You saw what you wanted to see, a quiet omega, a convenient healer, a complication when the bond revealed itself." She stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see how the silver light had transformed her amber eyes to luminous quicksilver. "But Rowan saw me before he knew what I was. Followed my scent across territories because something in him recognized what you rejected." The painful truth silenced further objection. Around them, both packs watched the exchange with held breath, witnessing the final resolution of a broken bond and the cementing of a new one. Alpha Morgan broke the tense silence, political instinct reasserting itself. "The hour grows late. We will convene tomorrow to discuss the practical implementation of this covenant restoration." His gaze shifted between Liana and Rowan, calculating still. "In the meantime, where will the newly claimed pair reside? The border station seems inappropriate for an alpha, and bringing an omega, even a moonstone blood, into Midnight Crest territory without formal ceremony would be unprecedented." The question was practical yet loaded with implication. Where Liana and Rowan spent their first night as claimed mates would set precedent for territorial considerations moving forward. Before either could answer, Elder Maya stepped forward, her weathered face serene with ancient wisdom. "There is a place," she said, her voice carrying unexpected authority. "Sacred ground that belongs to neither pack in both, the Isle of Silver Mist. Murmurs rippled through the older wolves. The island that sat in the center of the river dividing their territories was largely forgotten by younger generations, a small, mist-shrouded sanctuary considered neutral ground in ancient times. The isle hasn't been used for ceremonies in generations, one of Morgan's advisors objected. Precisely because we forgot its purpose, Maya countered. It was created as sanctuary for Moonstone Bloods and their mates, sacred ground where covenant could be enacted without pack politics interfering. Rowan's expression shifted with recognition. My grandmother spoke of such a place, he said quietly. A nexus where moonstone veins from both territories converged beneath river water. Then it is settled, Maya declared, with a certainty that brooked no argument from either alpha. The claiming pair will complete their bond on sacred ground, as tradition demands. The pronouncement carried weights both practical and symbolic. On neutral territory, neither pack could claim authority over the union. On sacred ground, the mate bond would be witnessed not just by wolves but by the covenant itself. Alpha Morgan clearly disliked the arrangement but found no grounds to object that wouldn't expose his desire to maintain control over Liana's power. With visible reluctance, he nodded once. So be it. Rowan's hand found Liana's, their fingers intertwining as silver light spiraled up their joined arms. We accept this sacred honor, he answered formally, though his glacial eyes never left Liana's face. Within that gaze burned promise that had nothing to do with pack politics and everything to do with claiming long postponed. The Isle of Silver Mist earned its name. As their small boat approached through pre-dawn darkness, tendrils of luminous fog swirled across the water's surface, parting only to reveal glimpses of moonstone-studded shoreline. The sanctuary itself remained hidden, cloaked in mist that seemed to respond to their presence, curling around their vessel like curious fingers, tasting the silver light that flowed between them. It recognizes you, Rowan murmured, his powerful frame poised at the boat's bow. The island itself welcomes Moonstone blood. Since departing from the gathered packs, they had spoken little. The weight of ceremony, of transition, had settled around them, transforming political alliance into something far more intimate. Now, as the island's shore emerged from swirling mist, anticipation thickened the air between them. Elder Maya had prepared them separately before their departure, Liana in the traditions of Moonstone claiming, Rowan in the responsibilities of mate to covenant keeper. Ancient knowledge, long suppressed, now flowed freely once more. As their boat nudged against a narrow wooden dock, Rowan stepped out first, securing the vessel before turning to offer Liana his hand. The gesture, though simple, carried ceremonial weight. Alpha offering assistance not as dominance but as partnership. Liana accepted his hand, the contact sending fresh silver light spiraling between them. The island feels alive, she whispered as her feet touched the shore. Beneath her, the ground thrummed with welcoming energy, the largest concentration of moonstone she'd yet encountered resonating with her blood. It is alive, Rowan confirmed, his voice dropping to match her hushed tone. Sacred places remember, even when wolves forget. Hand in hand, they followed a path that revealed itself only as they walked, smooth stones illuminated by their approach, fading again as they passed. The mist parted before them, closing behind like a living curtain ensuring their privacy. At the island's heart stood a circular clearing, its perimeter marked by 7 ancient pillars of raw moonstone reaching toward the night sky. At the center waited a raised platform of polished stone, draped with furs so white they seemed to glow in the moonlight. The claiming bed. The sacred ground where covenant would be sealed through the most primal of wolf rituals. Liana's steps faltered, not from reluctance but from the overwhelming weight of what they were about to enact. Not just a mate bond between wolf and wolf, but restoration of balance between Moonstone Blood and Stone Alpha, representatives of bloodlines meant to complement each other since the first covenant. Rowan sensed her momentary hesitation, turning to face her at the clearing's edge. His expression held none of the alpha dominance he typically projected. Instead, vulnerability shone in his glacial eyes, the wolf beneath the man revealing itself without pretense. "Fear?" he asked softly, misinterpreting her pause. Liana shook her head, a smile curving her lips. "Awareness," she corrected. "Of standing at the threshold of something ancient and new all at once." Relief softened his features as he lifted one hand to trace the curve of her cheek. "Since the moment I caught your scent on the wind," he confessed, voice roughened with emotion rarely displayed, "nothing has felt more right than you." The simple truth in his declaration dissolved the last of her reservation. Without another word, Liana closed the distance between them, pressing her body against the solid warmth of his chest as her lips found his. Unlike their first kiss in the mountain cave, tentative, restrained, this one ignited instantly. The silver light surrounding them flared brilliant as Rowan's control shattered, his powerful arms lifting her against him as though she weighed nothing. Her legs wrapped instinctively around his waist, bringing them into intimate alignment that drew matching groans from both. "Liana," he breathed against her mouth, the name both reverence and plea. "If we don't slow down." "Don't," she interrupted, nipping at his lower lip with teeth that had sharpened with desire. "Don't slow down. Don't hold back." Her hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her transformed gaze, silver meeting ice blue. "Claim me as I claim you. Completely." Something primal and possessive flashed across his features, the alpha wolf responding to its mate's demand. With deliberate steps, Rowan carried her toward the platform at the clearing center, the silver mist swirling more frantically around them as if excited by their approach. As he laid her reverently upon the moonlit furs, his powerful frame covering hers like living shelter, Liana felt certainty settle into her bones. This was right. This was fated. This was balance restored through passion unleashed. "Mine," Rowan growled, the word rumbling from deep in his chest as his mouth blazed a trail of fire down her throat. "Yours," she agreed, arching into his touch as layers of clothing dissolved beneath urgent hands. "And you are mine." The claiming unfolded as ceremony and passion interwoven, ancient ritual merging seamlessly with primal need. As their bodies joined beneath the watching moon, silver light and ice blue energy spiraled together, creating patterns across their skin that wrote covenant into flesh itself. When Rowan's teeth found the juncture of her neck and shoulder, the traditional claiming mark of wolfkind, Liana felt not submission but completion, the circle closing as she simultaneously marked him in turn, her teeth breaking skin just as his did. The dual claiming, unprecedented in wolf hierarchy where alpha marked and omega received, triggered transformation beyond physical union. The silver light surrounding them erupted skyward in a column so bright it temporarily banished night, visible to both waiting packs across miles of territory. Beneath the island itself, long-dormant moonstone deposits flared to life, responding to the covenant renewed through blood and bond and breathless surrender. The stones sang with awakened consciousness, their energy flowing upward through earth and water to wrap around the claiming pair like blessing incarnate. In that suspended moment of perfect union, of alpha and omega transcending hierarchy, of opposing packs bridged through ancient bloodlines, of covenant restored through equal claiming, something fundamental shifted in the world's foundation. Balance, long disturbed, found its center once more. As they lay entwined in aftermath, silver light still pulsing gently across their joined forms, Liana traced the claiming mark she'd left on Rowan's powerful shoulder. The wound was already healing, silver light accelerating the process, ensuring the scar would remain as permanent testament to their bond. "I can feel them," she murmured, wonder softening her voice. "The stones. All of them, across both territories. Awake. Aware." Rowan's fingers mirrored her actions, tracing his own mark upon her skin with possessive tenderness. "They recognize their chosen vessels," he replied. The covenant fulfilled after generations of waiting. Not fulfilled, Liana corrected gently. Only beginning. Her silver eyes met his, knowledge flowing through blood speaking through her. What we've started here will transform both packs. Challenge traditions built on fear rather than balance. Instead of apprehension, Rowan's expression held only fierce pride. Then we will face those challenges together. As equals. His arms tightened around her, protective yet respectful of her newfound strength. As was always meant to be. As dawn approached, painting the mists surrounding their sanctuary with hints of rose and gold, Liana and Rowan remained entwined upon sacred ground. The rejected Omega and the untamed Alpha transformed through covenant into something wolfkind had forgotten was possible. Balance. Partnership. Power meeting power as equal force. The stones beneath them hummed with renewed purpose, spreading awareness through both territories that would, by sunrise, awaken wolves to possibilities long denied through fear and control. Change had come to Redstone and Midnight Crest, written in silver fire and sealed with blood freely given. Dawn broke over the territories with light that seemed to rise from the earth rather than descend from the sky. Wolves from both packs woke to find moonstone fragments in their homes, long-dormant pieces used as decorations or forgotten in drawers, glowing with renewed vitality. The stones sang, actually sang, with melodic vibrations that brought tears to the eyes of elders who had heard only whispers of such phenomena in ancient stories. The world had transformed overnight, and at its center stood a pair whose claiming had rewritten pack law without spilling a single drop of blood in challenge. Liana and Rowan emerged from the mist-shrouded isle as the sun crested the eastern mountains, their boat gliding silently across water that rippled with silver reflections. The claiming marks on their throats had healed into matching patterns, not simple scars but intricate designs of silver and blue that seemed to pulse with each shared heartbeat. Both packs waited on opposite riverbanks, uncertainty keeping them separate despite the visible evidence of covenant renewed throughout their territories. Alpha Morgan stood rigid at Redstone's shore, his expression carefully neutral despite the way his gaze fixated on the transformed Omega who had once been deemed unworthy of his pack's attention. They fear what they don't understand, Rowan murmured, his thumb tracing circles against Liana's palm as their boat approached the meeting point. They fear power they cannot control. Then we will teach them understanding, Liana replied, her voice carrying newfound authority without arrogance. We will show them that control was never the point. As their vessel touched shore at the neutral meeting ground, a sandbar that formed a natural bridge between territories, they stepped onto land still hand in hand. The silver light surrounding them had settled overnight into a steady glow rather than erratic pulses, suggesting control mastered rather than power newly awakened. Elder Maya was first to approach, her weathered face alight with wonder as she studied their united forms. The covenant is complete, she said, not a question but confirmation. The marks upon you, they're unlike any claiming scars I've seen in 80 years as pack elder. Because this isn't just a mate bond, Liana explained, her free hand rising unconsciously to touch the intricate pattern on her throat. It's covenant made flesh. Balance restored through blood freely given. Murmurs rippled through both gathered packs. Younger wolves pushed forward curiously while older ones hung back, uncertainty warring with fascination on their faces. Alpha Morgan broke through the crowd, authority radiating from his powerful frame despite the uncertainty in his eyes. Pretty words and magical displays don't change pack law, he began, falling back on familiar ground. An Omega from Redstone cannot simply. I am not simply an Omega, Liana interrupted, her tone respectful but uncompromising. I am Moonstone blood, last of my line. The Covenant recognizes no pack divisions where its vessels are concerned. And I am not simply an alpha seeking to claim another pack's wolf, Rowan added smoothly, diplomatic yet firm. I am Stone Alpha, guardian of Covenant understanding that has survived while others forgot. The formal declarations hung in the morning air, challenging generations of pack structure. Around them, the gathered wolves shifted uneasily, caught between tradition and the undeniable evidence of power that transcended their hierarchies. Jace pushed through the crowd, his expression resigned yet determined. As Beta, his voice carried influence even as his failed claim on Liana remained fresh in collective memory. "What exactly does this covenant restoration mean for our packs?" he asked, practical concerns overriding personal feelings. "For treaties, hunting rights, moonstone harvest?" The directness of the question broke the tension, redirecting focus to concrete implications rather than abstract power shifts. Liana's appreciation for Jace's pragmatism briefly overrode lingering hurt. This was the quality that had first drawn her to him, before rejection revealed his limitations. "It means prosperity," she answered directly, addressing both packs rather than just leadership. "The stones are awake again, their consciousness restored through balanced exchange. Their blessings will flow more powerfully than any living wolf has witnessed: enhanced healing, stronger territory bonds, bloodlines fortified against disease and weakness." "But these blessings are not one-sided gifts," Rowan continued seamlessly. "The covenant requires reciprocity. Energy given freely in ritual observance. Protection of sacred grounds where stones grow. Respect for their sentience rather than exploitation of their power." And most importantly, Liana added, her silver gaze sweeping across familiar and unfamiliar faces alike, acknowledgement that moonstone bloods are not resources to be hidden or controlled, but essential partners in maintaining balance between stones and wolves. The implications settled over the gathering, change inevitable but perhaps not unwelcome if benefits outweigh disruption to established order. "And what of pack boundaries?" Alpha Morgan pressed, addressing the question uppermost in many minds. "If you two stand outside pack hierarchy, what prevents chaos from following? What maintains necessary structure?" A thoughtful silence followed, broken unexpectedly by Elder Maya's measured voice. "Perhaps we have been asking the wrong questions all along." She stepped into the neutral space between alphas, her authority derived not from dominance but from wisdom accumulated across decades. "Perhaps the question isn't how Covenant challenges our structures, but how our structures diverged from Covenant that sustained our ancestors." Her perspective shifted the conversation fundamentally, opening space for reimagining rather than mere defense of tradition. Wolves from both packs exchanged glances, centuries-old animosities momentarily suspended in the face of shared revelation. "The moonstone harvest was never meant to be divided equally between packs," Liana explained, following Maya's opening. "The stones aren't resources to be parceled out, but entities that respond to respectful communion. Their blessings flow naturally to those who approach with reverence rather than entitlement." "Which means," Rowan added, "artificial divisions based on territory mean nothing to the stones themselves. They respond to intention, to relationship, not to pack affiliation." A wolf from Midnight Crest, one of Rowan's senior advisors, stepped forward hesitantly. "Are you suggesting pack boundaries should be dissolved? Generations of structure abandoned?" "No," Liana answered firmly, sensing the fear beneath the question. "Pack identity provides necessary community, family bonds, structured leadership for everyday concerns." Her hand tightened around Rowan's, drawing strength from their connection. "But where Covenant is concerned, where Moonstone communion is practiced, arbitrary divisions must be transcended." A third space, Rowan suggested, the concept forming between them through their bond. Sacred ground maintained by both packs, where Covenant rituals are performed without pack politics interfering. Where Moonstone bloods, should others awaken, can be trained without fear of exploitation. The suggestion sparked immediate intrigue. A solution that honored tradition while creating space for transformation, familiar enough to be acceptable, progressive enough to accommodate new understanding. The Isle of Silver Mist, Elder Maya nodded, comprehension dawning. Already neutral territory. Already sacred ground. The perfect sanctuary for covenant observance. As discussion flowed around them, practical details of implementation, schedules for ritual observance, arrangements for cross-pack cooperation, Liana and Rowan exchanged private glances. The political groundwork being laid mattered, but beneath it flowed deeper current of personal transformation still unfolding between them. There will be resistance, Rowan murmured for her ears alone, his thumb tracing the claiming mark on her throat. Change never comes without struggle. But not all struggle requires battle, Liana replied, wisdom flowing through blood speaking through her. Sometimes transformation happens through persistence rather than force. Through example rather than command. The truth in her observation settled between them, reinforcing the balance their union embodied. Alpha strength tempered by healer's compassion. Primal power guided by ancient wisdom. Neither dominating, both essential. As the morning progressed, wolves from both packs gradually mingled, tentative at first but with increasing ease as the practical benefits of cooperation became evident. Young healers approached Liana with questions about moonstone applications their training had never covered. Seasoned warriors listened intently as Rowan explained forgotten rituals his grandmother had preserved through generations of secrecy. The divisions remained, wolves still identified primarily with their birth packs, but bridges formed where walls had stood for centuries. Small steps toward larger transformation, covenant restoration beginning with simple conversations across artificial boundaries. Near midday, as discussions settled into productive planning, Liana felt a familiar presence approach. Jace stood nearby, hesitation in his posture as he waited for acknowledgement. With a reassuring squeeze of Rowan's hand, she stepped away to meet her former suitor on neutral ground, not as rejected Omega but as Moonstone blood fully realized. "You were right," Jace said without preamble, surprising her with immediate honesty. "I never truly saw you. Not until it was too late." The admission held no manipulation, no attempt to reclaim what he had discarded. Only recognition of truth long denied. "Perhaps you weren't meant to," Liana replied, compassion replacing lingering hurt. "Perhaps your rejection was necessary for my awakening. For covenant restoration that benefits all." Understanding passed between them, not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance of paths diverged for necessary reasons. Jace's gaze flickered briefly to the claiming mark on her throat, then to where Rowan stood watching without interference. "He sees you," Jace acknowledged quietly. "Not just what you are, but who you are." "Yes," Liana agreed simply. "As I see him." No further words were necessary. With a respectful nod that acknowledged her new standing, Jace returned to his pack duties, their personal chapter closed with dignity rather than lingering resentment. As afternoon light gilded the gathered wolves with gentle radiance, Liana rejoined Rowan at the riverbank. His arm slipped around her waist, drawing her against his side in a gesture both protective and equalizing. "Happy?" he asked softly, the single word containing worlds of meaning. Liana considered the question deeply. 3 days ago, she had been a rejected Omega, exiled to border duty, convinced her worth had been assessed and found lacking. Now she stood transformed, power awakened, covenant restored, claimed and claiming in equal measure. But happiness seemed too simple a word for the completion she felt. For the purpose discovered. For the balance achieved between being valued and being equal. "Content," she answered finally, turning in his arms to face him fully. "Whole in a way I never knew was possible." Rowan's eyes softened with matching certainty, his forehead touching hers in wolf gesture of profound intimacy. "The covenant promised partnership," he murmured. "But not even ancient prophecy prepared me for finding my match in every way that matters." Around them, the gathering continued, packs negotiating new relationships, wolves adjusting to transformed reality, leaders adapting to power redistributed rather than concentrated. Important processes, necessary transitions. But for this suspended moment, with silver light flowing between them and the river murmuring its ancient song beside them, Liana and Rowan stood apart from politics and prophecy both. Not alpha and omega bound by hierarchy, but partners united by choice as much as fate. The beta walked away when I was invisible, Liana whispered, ancient truth speaking through present understanding. The alpha stood beside me until I saw myself. And now? Rowan asked, his voice roughened with emotion rarely displayed. Her smile held certainty earned through transformation rather than gifted by circumstance. Now we walk forward together, she answered. Not as leader and follower, but as covenant-fulfilled equal steps on shared path. The silver light surrounding them pulsed in affirmation, spreading outward to touch waiting wolves from both packs. A visible reminder that balance restored between Moonstone blood and Stone Alpha extended beyond personal union to collective blessing. What had begun as rejection had culminated in recognition. What had started as exile had transformed into homecoming. What had been broken had been made whole, not through correction but through completion. As shadows lengthened across territories no longer divided by fear, Liana and Rowan stood at the center of transformation larger than themselves. Covenant vessels, yes. But more importantly, living embodiment of truth forgotten and reclaimed. That the strongest bonds form not through dominance and submission, but through power recognizing power across artificial divides. Through equals choosing each other, again and again, with eyes wide open to both shadow and light. Through the courage to be fully seen, and the wisdom to truly see in return.